everybody? Please make yourself at home. Well, today is Mother's Day, and Mother's Day gets celebrated in a lot of ways, but one of those things we want to say for sure is if you're coming in today and your experience of Mother's Day has a bittersweet quality, you have a loving experience with your mom, but she may not be here today, whether it's here or even here among us. She's already passed into the next life, a life we're pointing our lives towards. I want to let you know this is a place to celebrate, whether it's a place to remember. So we're going to be talking about that in a large way today. You might be sitting next to your mom. If so, squeeze your hand a little tighter. Growing up, my dad's kind of a goofball. My dad, who just lost his mom, my grandma just passed away a couple months ago. But he would always talk, when it comes to Mother's Day, my mom was like, are you going to get me a gift, buddy? That's how she used to say, are you going to get me a gift, buddy? And he's like, no. I have my mom, you're my mama. Okay, so I don't know exactly how you celebrate around your place, but whether it's mom or mama, hopefully you get a chance to sit next to her or certainly celebrate today, because you are a blessing to us. Well, today is a special expression of a series we started a couple of weeks ago. It's a special way to celebrate Mother's Day in the midst of what ends up being a pretty interesting passage. It's a series, though, if you've not been here before, maybe you're coming in fresher to the last couple of weeks. It's a series we call Life Hacks. Now, if you weren't here for that first Sunday or you don't know what a life hack is, I'll give you one basic idea. As we pointed out week one, hacking into a computer. So computer programmers, hackers get into computers and they go straight to the stuff they want and they'll pull it out. Well, a life hack is basically a clever little way, actually simpler than we expected and more an obvious way to get something done in life. A clever way to just deal with the challenges of everyday life. That's a life hack. It's a new word. Well, we showed you a few examples of what a life hack was in week one, and I'd like to give you a few more for those who are maybe just coming in on Mother's Day, getting a little taste of what we're talking about. Here's how a life hack might work. Well, this first one is special, given it's kind of Mother's Day, and combination not only Mother's Day, but also it's we're getting ready to go to the beach, starting to warm up. People like to go to the beach, but one of the things that frustrate me the most, I'm sure the same for you, when you go to the beach, don't you just get tired of sand getting on the blanket, sand getting on the sheet? So this is a life hack that says instead of bringing a sheet or a blanket, bring a fitted sheet, and the sand will never get kicked up into your blanket. You guys like that? It's a life hack. Now, granted, banjo music may need to get played in the background of that. It's a little bit hillbilly, but you don't have sand in your blanket. So that's one idea. Here's another genius one that I only wish that I had used before. I'm terrible. I'm not a very handy person. You want to drill something, and sometimes, like with the paintings, there's multiple spots that you have to drill, and it's so frustrating for me. I'm just not good at that. And so here's a recommendation. If you have multiple holes you need to drill for a painting, a picture, or like what you see up here on the screen, take a photocopy of what you're getting ready to drill the holes for, put that photocopy up on the wall, make sure it's level, and then drill the holes into the paper. Voila, life hack. You guys like that? Obviously you're not, you must be handy because this makes sense, a ton of sense for me. All right, here's what, how many of you guys are cheapos? Tightwads, frugal, okay, is that the word you're waiting for, right? You're frugal people, okay. This one's for you. Tired of flushing all of that money down the drain, or down the toilet when you flush that toilet. Here's the way to save some money because you don't have to fill the water, it's so high in your toilet. Take a gallon jug of water, put it into the tank, and then the water level automatically rises and you don't have to waste all that water, especially if you're only going number one, right? That's the idea right there. That's how that works. One last one, another life hack idea. Now, I'm not trying to stereotype women, okay? Understand what this is about. It's just a life hack that works for everybody. And if you have a cookbook, right? You know, you're trying to put a masterpiece together, but you don't remember everything, and so you get your cookbook out, and it just always snaps back closed. Or like my wife's cookbook, it's filled there's the book, but then she stuffs a bunch of other recipes in it, so it sits like this, even though it's supposed to sit like that. Maybe your recipes have egg or vanilla or flour getting pasted to it. Let's resolve that. Let's get a cookbook that will hang up above. So get a pants hanger, you can see it on the screen, get a pants hanger and hang that cookbook up right there at eye contact. Is this a genius idea? Absolutely genius idea. I thought so too. I went out for Mother's Day and gave my wife 20 pants hangers, which she thought, these are great. So she put my clothes on them and put them in my truck and said, here's the key. So that was a strange reaction. Sometimes life hack gifts backfire. Other life hacks work better, and obviously we're in the midst of a series that are about spiritual life hacks, not just about shortcuts to different things in life. And these spiritual shortcuts are what we spend these last 2 weeks, and then today we're into our third. that first week we talked about really critical thing that I think is plaguing America and plaguing the American church was this: don't dabble in spirituality. Just go all the way with whatever you believe, go all the way with it. And certainly it's an invitation into taking the scriptures at their word and following Christ as he is. But just don't dabble. Dabblers never get what they want. The second life hack that we learned about last week, Pastor Rick was speaking from Matthew chapter 18, and that is a shortcut. And I don't mean a shortcut in the sense of like trying to bypass the way it should be done. It's a shortcut, direct route, and I think this is 99.9% of us. We have a problem with somebody, we don't like something, like somebody said it, we don't, whatever it might be. 99.9% of us will go and we'll just try every other route than just to talk to the person directly. I mean, you know what, I'm going to talk to my mom about what she thinks about this. And here's the one that happens in church. I'm going to go and talk to them, one of the members of the church, because I want to pray together about this situation, which is usually code for what? Gossip, right? That's what happens. I want to pray about it. Well, no, you don't. You just want to talk to me about it. Instead of just going directly to the person that we have a question with or an issue to deal with. And so he spent a lot of time last week talking in that level. Well, this third life hack in the series that we encounter today is this. We all reach a day, certainly reach seasons in our life when we must let go. Let go. If you have a Bible, I'd love for you to turn to 2 Timothy chapter 1. We're going to find something here that I think is dynamic, and as we find its way into Mother's Day celebration. 2 Timothy chapter 1. You know what? We need more Bibles in hands. Amen? We need more Bibles in hands. I want you to find it yourself because you're going to need to do this for the rest of your life. 2 Timothy 1, the Bible is true, and this works all the way. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3. This is a letter from Paul, the apostle, to a younger pastor who he's mentored, and so he continues that mentoring with some of the words he says here. Timothy, I thank God for you. I thank God for you, the God I serve with a clear conscience, just as my ancestors did. Night and day, I constantly, say it with me, remember. I constantly remember you in my prayers. I long to see you again, for I remember your tears as we parted, and I will be filled with joy when we are together again. Verse 5, I remember your genuine faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother, Lois, and your mother, Eunice. This is why I remind you, remember, and I remind you of this, fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you when I laid my hands on you. For God, listen to this response of a Christ follower. For God has not given us the spirit of fear and timidity. This is not the response of a Christ follower that's strong, a person who's been raised right. God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power and of love and self-discipline. 5 verses there in the book of 2 Timothy. How does today's passage teach us the life hack of letting go? And even more importantly, how does that have anything to do with moms and Mother's Day? A lot. Hopefully you'll be able to see the longer we immerse ourselves in this passage. In these words, you probably noticed there was a special repetition of a word, and that word was remember. 3 times it gets used in a 5-verse span. That's a lot. That's saying a lot. 5 times that word remember gets used, and in verse 6, something of the same ilk, and that is the word remind. Remember, and remind. 3 remembers and a remind. 4 actual references to meaningful experiences of things that had happened in our past, or in this case, Timothy and Paul's past. 4 things that had happened meaningfully in their past that would affect and guide the present. Remember these things, and I remind you of those things that you knew already. Now, if we're parenting and mentoring, some of you are moms, some of you are parents, and some of you are not at that place in life yet, but you may be coaching somebody along or mentoring them along. No matter what this may applies principally across the board. And if we're parenting and we're mentoring someone else along, we're going to be doing a lot of 2 things during that time, especially as parents. You're going to be doing 2 massive things. No matter what, whether it's making dinner or working on how your kid talks, how they're doing at school. It doesn't matter. It's 2 things. One, it's a lot of reminding and a lot of remembering. This is what parenting does, especially moms. A lot of reminding and a lot of remembering. And the longer that we're parenting someone, the more one of those 2, reminding or remembering, one of those is going to go up. Probably in correspondence, the other is going to be going down at that time, in that season of parenting or mentoring. For instance, early on in our parenting, we all have done a lot of reminding of things to our little ones. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Don't forget to make your bed, honey. You're so sweet. The next day, you forgot to make your bed. It must have just been an oversight. The next day, if you ever fail to make your bed again, I will kill you, right? The basic reminder, right? Don't forget to wash your hands. Oh, that's strange. Did you just forget to wash your hands? The next day, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're trying to eat with that on your hands, right? It's a sequence of reminders. Don't forget to take out the garbage. This one, turn off the lights. Ever done that one? Are you kidding me? This is like constant. Turn off the lights. 2 to 3 weeks ago, I don't remember exactly when, but it doesn't matter. It could have been 4 weeks ago, 4 years ago. In our family, turn off the lights is one of our constant reminders in our Christ-following experience. 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a day, and I'm telling you this is the literal truth because I remember it specifically. I went into the kids' bathroom and turned the lights off 11 times. 11 times. First couple, I'm like, turn the lights off. Did that. Next one, I'm talking to myself. How many different ways you gotta say it? Turn it up. After the third time, I just went like this. 4, 5 now, lights. I mean, remember that? And so the reminding started to get really, really intense. Reminding. This is what parents do. Moms, you've done that many times. Children don't have the disciplines or the rhythms of healthy living yet when they're young. That's why we're here. That's why moms are here. So what do? One of the 2 basic parts of the relationship. We remind them. We do it both in word. Turn off the lights. This is number 11. And indeed, because what's ironic in our home, my wife would probably say if she were preaching today is, I am really, really insane about turning off the lights. Not because of saving a couple extra pennies. I just want some discipline. And she would be quick to point out, well, yeah, you're constantly wanting everyone else's light out, but the light on your nightstand is constantly on. You never turn it off. And so I'm telling it in word, but not always not practicing it in deed. It's got to be both of those things. So when a child and a parent are both early on in that relationship, until we both get down the road together a little bit more, all right? Many of us have been there. If we're early here and they're little and we're brand new at parenting, until we get down that road a little bit more, we have fewer memories than we will right now. So we're doing a lot more reminding and a lot less remembering. But that's going to switch. Because as those early investments of reminders begin to pay off, not simply in just the relationship, but in them. Because why are we reminding them? Really, is turning the light off, is it going to make a difference? Is it going to save the world? No. We're going to save a couple of nickels if we think we need to turn the lights off. What are we more interested in than turning the lights off? We want to see a little discipline. Because you're going to have to practice discipline in other things in your life too. Let's just see, can you handle the little things? Because there's going to be bigger things to come. That's what we're mostly hoping for. And the more that we do those early investments of teaching them disciplines, teaching them the rhythms of life, the more these other new things begin to take shape, these memories that we're having together. You can see in them character being developed. Moms see this all the time. And it is in this process of heavy on the reminding, lighter on the remembering, to the reminding needs to be happening less and less, and a lot more remembering. And this way, the strongest and most wonderful relationships are forged. So, moms that I greeted before church today who have rings around your eyes this morning and you walked in with a little bit more of a sloop's shoulder, keep the faith. It's coming. Even if you feel like you're getting ready to die, it works out. Just so keep doing the reminding process. It'll be a lot of great memories. Because as those remembrances, as those reminders begin to really take hold, you said it 1,000 times, and suddenly they just do it without you having to say anything. And when that happens, you're like, I feel good about you, and I'm starting to feel good about me. I'm seeing the relationship is working, and the character is being built. And when those reminders begin to take hold, the remembering finally gets a chance to kick in. Now we've lived life together. Now we're living like one another. And that's beautiful, but do not be fooled. We're not living for this moment and failing to live in this moment. It's both the reminding and the remembering that you're called to, but it's all about that relationship. But when we get to that place, okay, when the reminding and the remembering are starting to blend over one into the next, and then you're starting to lean this way, and you're starting to feel that joy, I want to encourage you on one level. It starts to get complicated there. A complication comes into play. It's a tough but beautiful part of the relationship between the parents, in this day, as we're talking about today, the moms with the child. It's a tough but a beautiful part of the relationship. Just as we've done all the reminding, and now they're starting to pick it up, and we can start to step back a little bit from the reminding, all the reminding that we used to have to do, and the memories begin to beautify that relationship, it's then that we quickly recognize that we have to start letting go. Isn't it? How many of you have trained children on driving a car? Raise your hands. Yeah, loud and proud. Come on, let's see it. Trained kids, you know better than all of us. I have a 14-year-old. Last night, my son and I we had to go run an errand, and he's 14, and I said, "Hey, buddy, you want to drive the car?" He's like, he said, "Yeah, sure." So I said, "Well, hey, I'll drive up here. We're going to get in a parking lot," and so he got in the driver's seat and pulled the seat up, and he stuck it in the gear, and he's like, he went for the radio. I said, "Dude, turn the radio off. Let's just go with it." So he starts to drive in the parking lot, and he's, I think until you figure it out, because kids think that life is like go-karts, you know what I'm talking about, where they think they're going to use the left and the right foot for brake and gassing. So he went for that. I said, no, it's one foot. You got to train your foot to think gassing or braking and gassing both. And so he starts to do this, and he's kind of gentle into it. And the first roundabout was pretty good, and then he got a little confident. We made another round, and then he started to put the gas down a little bit on the turn. I'm like, dude, whoa. You're going to crash my truck right into this pole. No. And so I'm learning at an infinitesimal part of what you feel as parents that have sent your kids off into a car. Right? Dear God, how can I send them into the world and then send them to a car? We're all afraid of your kid, right? We're all afraid of them. And especially you. Why? Because they matter everything to you, right? I'm going to put them in a car, and I'm exposing them to the world. And I'm exposing them to their crazy selves. 16-year-old people should not be allowed to have a weapon, right? Like a car. But we know that that's how things begin to transform in their life. And we realize that I cannot, you'd say, "Oh, dear God, please, maybe if they just lived next to me all my life, then I would never have to send them in a car. They never have to drive anywhere." But that's not how life is. And we say, while the disciplines have been set in, and the memories are beginning to build, along with those memories coming letting go, because you have to. That's how it works, isn't it? And it's at that point we realize that they're finally becoming what all those years we've been trying to remind them that we wanted them to be. And in doing that, they're becoming who they're becoming. We made them on purpose, didn't we? We made them on purpose. And now they're becoming who they're designed to be by God and by us. And we did not, when we made them on purpose, we did not make them for ourselves, did we? We made them, the longer we become in the disciplines of God's kingdom, the more we made them for Him. And we made them for themselves. And we made them for the world that they're meant to enter. The world that they're meant to love. And the world that they're meant to change. It is for this precise reason why remembering becomes such a vital part of the relationship. Because when you let go, and now you're thinking about the things that used to happen that you had together, and now you're letting them go because they're forming new relationships, new experiences, experiencing and understanding the kingdom of God and the dreams that He has for them. There's a letting go factor there, isn't there? And it's why Paul tells Timothy, his son in the Spirit, the person he mentored, and the young man, he had to let go and throw him out into the world. He had to do that. Paul says, "I remember you in my prayers." I've been reminding you, and now you're sent out. And now I am remembering you by praying for you. Those people who are driving cars, or whose kids are driving cars, what are you doing? Now the disciplines are trailing off. Now you're sending them out, and what are you doing? Dear God, please, right? Dear God, please. I want to make more memories with my kid. Keep them safe. Keep the idiots away from them. Make their drive to work short. Make their drive to school safe. All the things that you pray, right? Praying goes way up after most of the reminding becomes a much smaller part of the relationship. We're reminding them less and less and praying more and more. Then Paul says, "I remember how your grandmother and your mother lived the faith that you now so passionately live too, Timothy. Moms, your faith lives on in your children. The quietest version of your faith and the loudest version of your faith is emerging in your kids. Here, this profound truth, yet it's a simple truth, is memorialized forever in how a daughter took on the faith of her mother and how the son of that daughter took on the faith of her. It's memorialized from grandma to mother to Timothy. A torch was passed. And guess what? You know who's famous in the Bible? We get one mention of each of these two ladies, but you know who's most famous in the Bible? Of course, between Paul's talking about Timothy. Timothy emerges in so much of the early church life. Guess who wouldn't be existing? Guess who would not be in the Bible? Guess what stories would not be written? Guess what letters we would never see or have been inspired if there wasn't a woman named Lois and a woman named Eunice living it in their own lives? Your faith matters deeply, because if you don't have it, I can almost guarantee it, they won't either. It's almost a statistical impossibility. Now, God can enter in so many places, but it's statistically unlikely. You have got to be powerful in your faith. So Paul says that's an important thing that I remember. Your mom and your grandma showed you how to do it. Now you're following it. And then lastly, Paul comments to Timothy. He says, I remember your tears. This is a part of my memory of you. Timothy had to let go of Paul. And Paul had to let go of Timothy. Just as Timothy had to let go of his grandma and his mom at some point in his life as well. And they had to let go of him. Why? Because God doesn't always have it where we're all sitting right next to each other. There's a kingdom. There's a world of profound need. And Paul says, I remember your tears when we separated last time. This is two guys talking. This is not typical guy talk. I remember you crying. And that hit me so hard, because this relationship is not like any other. And yet still, I send you out into the world, just like Eunice had, just like Lois had. Why? Because the call of God and the call of life pulled Timothy into the life God had been dreaming up for him. That doesn't always mean that we're living right next door to each other anymore, does it? But just because God is doing the calling, and because the calling is good, does not mean that it's always easy. In fact, most often the call of God in our life and the call into life is very hard. And in its own way, probably as bitter as it is sweet. For everyone, this is you and me, moms and kids and dads and everyday people. For everyone to be everything God intends, our remembrances must also include reminders that we have to always be letting go. It's a part of the design of the world. Letting go in those kind of moments when we'd much rather hang on. In 42 years, I've only been separated from my parents once, geographically speaking. It was over a 4-year period of time. They had lovingly adopted me 3 or 4 days into being born, and they loved me with all their lives. For a 4-year stretch, though, we were separated. The first 2 years, my freshman and sophomore years at Maranatha Baptist Bible College in Watertown, Wisconsin, we were separated by 9 hours of road. My dad was still a pastor in Kansas City at the time. The last 2 years of college, my junior and senior year, we just couldn't handle it anymore, so they moved from Kansas City up to here. Had to leave friends, deep friends, and they had to leave the church that they had planted. We had actually planted together when I was a kid. They had to leave that church there to come up here to, guess what? Plant this church. That was 22 years ago. Without the difficulty of the goodbye I'll tell you about with my mom and dad and I, without the goodbyes that they said in Kansas City, without those goodbyes there would have never been a hello here. Can you imagine never having met the person you're sitting next to? There are people whose marriages and kids are from this church, the life of this church. Can you imagine never having met these people, worshiped with the people who lead us on stage, had deep relationships? Hellos are not possible without sometimes having goodbyes, right? But I remember that first time. It was the first time I had felt it to that depth. when my mom and dad dropped me off, it was a very, very hot August day in 1990. I was a freshman. I was 18 years old. And I was up there well before. I was in college football, but I beat everybody else on the team up there except for 3 other guys who I'd never met. And they dropped me off. Well, if you've met my mom more than once, you know that she cries at jewelry commercials and, wax the floor, she'll cry at that. I mean, it doesn't take much. And so she's bawling and she's getting into the car and they're pulling out. What they did not see was what happened with me. It was the first time I remember bawling. On all possible levels. You know what that feels like if you've ever felt like, not so much that I was alone, but that the next thing was happening. And I did not have them to do it with. I didn't have immediate advice. I was going to have to put money in a payphone to get advice, but I couldn't see it face to face. They didn't see how hard I cried when they pulled out of that parking lot that day. And that's a sweet memory now, but it did not feel like it at the time. I'm not sure if you've ever been there before. Those of you who are grandmas and moms, you do. That moment was saturated with tears because it had been filled with a cascade of memories of a mom and a dad who gave everything up for me, who loved with all who they had. It had been examples from the very first moment all the way to today. And then, there that day, in one beginning version of it, like they had in small ways, would give me the keys to the car, send me off to the next thing, trusting when I came home one November day to say, I think God's called me to ministry, they said, makes sense, you're going to go. So those small versions building up, they plant me in Watertown, Wisconsin, and they drive off. And they're going to let go of me to become the man I was supposed to become, and I could only do it on my own. I could not do that with them. That's just a reality of life, amen? It's a part of life. A mom raises her kids. A mom raises her son to send them into the world to do what they're meant to do. I have a similar moment today to share with y'all. Julie and our 4 kids have been hearing from God again in our own lives. And much in the same way that I sensed a call from God on my life when I was 17 years old and God called me into ministry when I thought I was going a completely other direction, He planted me into that direction of life and ministry, and He planted us here 21 years ago, a little over 21 years ago, and have had nothing but amazing experiences and blessing, and I can't tell you how difficult what I'm getting ready to tell you is. God's called us to a new place, a new ministry that needs us so much more today than Grace Fellowship Church ever could. And that's been hard. And it's been exciting and frightening. And as we've told, obviously, our family, our close family, we've been sharing this news with and talking with some of the elders who you'll get to hear from today and telling our wisdom council, some whom you'll be able to hear from today. God has called us out in a way like He has done before. And if there was a skeptic in the process, between Julie Moreland and John Moreland, if there would have been a skeptic, you were looking at the 2 of them, because we have no reason to leave. Church, family, friend, this is our deepest relationship. My wife has never lived more than 10 minutes one side or the other of this church, other than when she went to college. We've never left this place. My whole adult life is right here. We have no reason to leave. We've been nothing but happy. Ministry is better today than it has ever been. Grace Fellowship Church is the strongest it's ever been. It's top level and mid-level leadership, and every servant in between is in perfect position. The church is bigger than it's ever been, more evangelistic impact, more redemptive impact in our community. It's the best place, but over the last couple of years, while God has been giving our church a growing vision about the impact it can have here, but especially in Mokena, alongside that vision inside of me, God's been telling me this, without me knowing how to find it. He was saying, we're getting the church to a place, and then the next thing is going to happen. And I didn't know what that meant, because I'd never heard that part of my life before. And so I'm like, well, you're going to show me something bigger, because that's not enough. And for 2 years at least, that prayer has been, that reflection with God has happened over and over and over again. But I'm like, you know what, God, you're going to have to rip me away. And you're going to have to use some kind of a Caterpillar truck to get my wife away too. We love this place. And yet God's made it clear all the way through. So if there's any trust that you have in me as a person or as a pastor, you're going to have to trust this much. It could only be God. I'd be happy to talk to you about what that is and give you some of those ways that we've sensed God move in our life. I'd be happy to talk to you about it because it's a reminder that God exists. And it's been clear. Every door that I thought there's no way that one's going to open, it opens and it bursts open. And the church that we're being called into is in a town called Evergreen, with a really interesting mix of people. And as we've been there a couple times now, we've been speaking with their people. This is part of the process of the call. One thing we've been reminded of is that this church that God's calling us to is a lot like Grace Fellowship Church was 8 or 10 years ago. And the things that our church needed and how we are today and who we are today took a lot of work and a lot of vision and a lot of resilience, and not just on one person's part, on a lot of people's part. But we have what I've been saying over and over again to people as I've been sharing this. Have you ever heard the phrase, an embarrassment of riches? Heard that phrase before? It's just too much. We don't need that much. We have an embarrassment of leadership and an embarrassment of vision, and I mean that in the best possible way. God has blessed our church so deeply. And I think there reaches a point, especially if you don't follow God when He calls you to the next thing, I think I would cap what God's doing here. I certainly know that for sure. You don't want me here if God wants me someplace else. Any more than if He has the next thing for you, you follow Him. And so we shared a couple of weeks ago the story of Abraham and Sarah. And we shared the story of Terah, his father, who went partway. And that had been rolling over in our hearts for a long, long time. And so we don't want to go halfway. We're going to follow God all the way, just as we did when we came here. We had a guy that same Sunday. You wouldn't know it until I told you now, but he was a gentleman who was he was here from the church that we're getting ready to get called to, or that we've been called to. And he came here that day, and he was supposed to be inconspicuous, act like he wasn't he was kind of just hanging around and interested in the church and talking to different people. He was not a very good actor, and I'm going to tell him so when I get back to Evergreen. But he came up right after the second service. He was sitting next to most of you. And he ran up to me right after the service without talking to anybody else. He's like, "Tell me again, why are you leaving here?" This is the guy responsible for trying to get me to Evergreen. He's like, "Why are you leaving here? This makes no sense to me. Explain this to me." And I said, "Ben, I'm not leaving here. I have no desire, no sense of why I would ever want to leave this place. Everyone we love and everything it's fun doing ministry today. I love my family. I love our friends. I love the people I'm working alongside. It's the best. I would never leave here. It has to be God pulling us, and that's the only thing I can say." And he was astounded at that. He's like, "We just lift this church and bring it to where our church is at." This has been a first experience for us, with Julie and I. And it's difficult. You can understand. And for those who are like, okay, you can say, well, hold on. Have you asked all the questions yet, John? Do you know all the details? Or are you doing it for the right reasons? Again, I would please come up to me. We'd love to talk to you in the next couple of weeks. If you have any questions, I'll tell you how God's been involved in it. If you have this little hesitation to say, okay, what's the story? What's the catch? What's the drama? There is none. There's no reason, but the answer is God. There is no little weird reason. There's no... who wants to leave these